Hi everyone, it's July 18th, 2024, and this is the weekly Backdrop Developer Meeting. We get together every week to talk about priorities for Backdrop CMS. My name is Nate Lampton. I'm Quick Sketch on the internet, core committer and technical lead for the Backdrop project, calling it from Oakland. We got a little group here today, but we'll run around the room and let everybody give a quick introduction. We'll start with Martin, and then we'll go to Joseph.
Hello, I'm Martin Price, a developer in Northeast England, United Kingdom, mainly working around Backdrop Contrib and developing sites and occasionally doing stuff in core. That's all.
Thanks, Martin. Joseph, and then Jen.
I'm Joseph. I'm a developer from Las Vegas, Nevada.
Thanks, Joseph. Jen, and then Savastri.
Jen Lampton from Oakland, California.
And I'm Sarvasri, and I'm in Walnut Cove, North Carolina, and mostly a site builder for myself. Not really a developer, so I'm just gonna hang out and see if I can learn anything.
Great. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. Let's see. Jen, do you want to do the contrib update?
Sure. All right, so this week we have a handful of new contrib projects. We have Fit Frames, which is a module with responsive iframes. Looks like we have Rozo, I don't know, French is not. This is a version of the Olivero theme from Drupal 10. So if anyone wants to put that on their sites and see what it looks like, it would be great if we had a version of that for Backdrop. Pretty cool. And we have a GitHub statistics module. I think we talked about this last week. This, I think, is a spin-off of the module that we have in backdropcms.org that gets counts for usage and stuff like that. So pretty cool.
Cool. All right. Thanks, Jen. We don't have a whole lot of new topics for today. There was no new posts in the forum requesting any particular topics. I don't think there was anything in Zulip either. But last week we had a whole bunch of topics and we didn't quite get through them all. And so one of the topics that was brought up was D2B upgrade module and its level of support. Let's see, it was brought up in the forum, but I know there was also a Zulip thread on it, and I lost track of who it was that asked the question. But a support request came in asking about using D2B, and they were having some trouble with it. And then
So no, it's not quite. They were having problems with an upgrade, but the problem wasn't with D2B. The problem was with Biblio module. So that's the one that I maintain.
Gotcha.
And so what happened was I used the word supported, which I think confused everyone, including maybe myself, in the process of doing that, where the guy was like, I'm having this problem. By the way, I did the upgrade using D2B. And I was like, oh, well, have you tried doing the upgrade without using D2B? Because D2B could be causing some of the problems. But what I said is D2B isn't a supported upgrade path. And everybody freaked out. And I didn't mean that D2B module wasn't supported. It's definitely very well supported. There are a bunch of great maintainers working on it. What I meant was that like there's some fundamental problems with how it works that could also be causing problems with upgrades. And I just wanted to eliminate that as a potential issue with this particular problem. I don't think it actually is related to that particular problem, especially now that I've spent some time looking at the actual problem. I'm sure it's not, but that was something where I was just like, there's this documented way to upgrade from Drupal to Backdrop, and using D2B skips some of those steps sometimes. And so we just need to make sure that we get those problems resolved in D2B so that we're not increasing the burden on all of Contrib to try and solve problems that aren't actually problems with their module, they're problems with DDB. And these are known issues. There's issue in the core queue, there's issues in the DDB queue. I don't think there's any surprises. And most of the people who use it are completely capable of working around those issues and getting their site upgraded. So there's not like, it's not like a bad way to do things. It's just something I think, this module's in development. And that's what I was just trying to get around that. So I said unsupported, and I think a lot of people got concerned with that word, but I did admit that was not the right way to say it. Issue queue, but the word is already out there. So now I'm trying to figure out how to clear that up a little bit. But yeah.
Yeah, one of the things that is interesting is that they probably wouldn't have been like, I have a problem with Backdrop if they'd only thrown on Backdrop Core and then pointed their database at it, because it would have upgraded probably with just Backdrop Core, but it would have only partially upgraded it because it wouldn't have gotten any of the Contrib modules and stuff like that. And so it's kind of interesting that D2B, in a way, like if that's the first approach people use, which wouldn't surprise me because it is kind of more accessible than doing it manually, where you just have to point Backdrop at your other database as well as download all the Contrib modules. But the normal upgrade process from Drupal to Backdrop is kind of so tedious that you always do it in steps, where it's like you first point core at it and check to make sure that works. Okay, wipe it out. Okay, now add some more Contrib modules in there. Okay, do that. Okay, it still worked. And so what D2B encourages or sets up for you is it does a pretty comprehensive upgrade all in one fell swoop, where it's like you're not trying out just core first. You try out core and literally every Contrib module that possibly can be upgraded all at the same time. And then when the upgrade doesn't work, it's nebulous to a new user about which module failed its upgrade. It just looks like the whole upgrade didn't work.
Sometimes, or if only one thing fails, like Biblio is the only thing it's pretty clear, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah,
I
it's kind
also
of-
feel like it does a really good job at like that step one of that upgrade process, right? Like you just want to see what happens when you get your site into Backdrop, so you get that list of issues that you need to work through. And I think that part of it is that expectations shouldn't be set that like when you're finished with step one, you're finished with your upgrade, right? It's like, well, now you got to go back and figure out like, did you accidentally get 2 copies of each user role, or is your site using the wrong? Like there's just stuff that you just gotta know you've got to do some QA on after you're done. And that same thing applies whether you do the upgrade the normal way or the D2B way. Like that's just a part of the process, is running the upgrade several times until you get it right. And I think just some expectations around like what it's actually like to do the upgrade, any upgrade would be useful. And I also, Nate, I often will upgrade all of my site all at once just to get an idea of like what happens, because sometimes it's fine, and all that process of doing it like core and then modules and then whatever is sometimes not necessary, because sometimes it just works.
Yeah, if all of your modules are already ported and already have a working upgrade path, then it's kind of just magical and just puts you in a working Backdrop site.
Yeah, that's the goal for the upgrade core upgrade. Recommended upgrade process also, right? Like there's no difference. Yeah.
But I think a lot of the problems with the D2B module come from the fact that we're starting with a pre-installed Backdrop site and replacing it.
Yep. And I had some ideas about that. I think I put them in the Zulib thread, but they should be in the DDB queue. I don't remember if I copied them over there or not. And I was talking to Nate about it too, about like, how can we make this not run into those problems, even if you're starting from a functional Backdrop site? Like, could you have 2 sites? Could you have one site that flips back and forth between like, now it's running Drupal code, now it's running Backdrop code? I don't know. I have no idea.
Right.
But yeah, there's just sort of like this, like the thing that people really like is that you start on a website and you have a user interface. And I would love to be able to keep that. And if we can figure out how to do that, even if like, Backdrop core would be really great. And then, yeah, just to get people that first step of like, I have everything I need for Backdrop, now run the upgrade.
Right. Well, it replaces the database, But I think the problem is it replaces the database, but it doesn't clear out your config directory.
Yeah,
Oh, it does.
And so you end up with extra config files that your site's not expecting.
So that is still an issue. That seems like that shouldn't be difficult to solve, I don't think.
well, the problem is like Backdrop needs that configuration in order to provide the interface in order to run the
Mhm.
upgrade. So there's
Right.
this like,
You've got to
Backdrop-
like have to like swap it out at the last moment.
Yeah. As a kind of, I'm not sure if this would work, but I wonder if D2B module itself could provide an update hook that I don't think that would actually work. I was like, maybe it could run it like a super duper early update hook, right? Like make itself like dependent on before the config system gets installed, and then D2B module itself would inject itself as part of the upgrade process to wipe out the config directory before the config directory starts getting used.
Well, I was thinking what might be useful is if we could get it to run on 2, so that there was like the
Mhm.
active configuration directory that the site is like operating on. And then when it runs the upgrade, it just puts the configuration that's creating somewhere else as part of that upgrade path. And then when the upgrade is complete, it could be like, now that I'm done doing the thing where I needed config A, I can switch to config B. So rather than doing it first, it would do it last. I don't know if that's even possible.
Mm.
But I was also thinking we might be able to do something with the database that's similar, where if it was able to run on like a secondary database and run the update on the secondary database and the secondary configuration, if your site exploded, there might be a way to be like switch back, and it would just be like, whoop, here's the original install configuration database, and here's your upgraded install configuration, and have some way that you could have both. So then when you're like, oh, switch back, now you can like import a new database, run it again. It would sort of give people an easier path to that repeated process of like run the upgrade, fix something, run the upgrade again. But yeah, that's getting really tricky. Like I know that Backdrop can have multiple databases. I don't know if the same code can run off of multiple databases in a non-multi-site
We can
setup.
use table prefixes for that.
Yeah, but yeah, I don't
Yeah,
know.
but
Cause-
it is a little tricky though, because it usually does require modifying settings.php to set up another prefix
And-
or another config directory. So
Mm.
I don't know. That's the real
I
convenience of D2B is that it's just like it doesn't have any special requirements, right? Because it only runs on one installation.
Yeah,
To its
the
own
benefit is the
detriment.
problem.
Yeah, yeah. The benefit is the benefit causes the problem. Yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, I think we have a bunch of good ideas. Like swap the config super early, swap the config super late. Try and do the upgrade in multiple databases. Like there's a bunch of things we could play with that would make that better. But I think like the fact is that it's sort of good enough as it is right now, decreases the incentive for people to work on the like really hard problems, because most people who are using it are able to get close enough with that upgrade that they can get through the upgrade process. I think that we should just need some better documentation
Mhm.
around what the expectations should be for people on that. And for people who use it all the time, if you can document, you're like, oh, these are the extra configuration files you're going to get from Backdrop's original install. Make sure you don't have them or they aren't, causing other issues. I don't know.
Right.
Yeah.
And Anoka's writing settings.php can get really sort of fraught with difficulties, but I wonder if the solution is to say, well, don't set up your settings.local.php until after you've done the upgrade, and it will use that to and it can, if it could basically modify that would override the settings in settings.php, and then it's a much cleaner file to start from to be able to modify than the settings.php. Just a thought.
I feel like in a lot of instances that's fine, because if it's like a shared host, which is likely where these people are, that file will still be writable. But in some instances that does get locked down. People would be like, do not modify any files that are settings, whatever, and then the server configuration will take over. But I'm not sure, like that audience I'm worried about is probably not a lot of overlap with the audience we're trying to help with this. So that might be a good place to start. We can just put some documentation that's like, don't create this file yet. We're about to overwrite it. And then afterwards we can be like, you can create the file. Here are the credentials that we used in it or something. And then that way, I don't know, they'd be able to have a nice clean starting point.
Great. Well, I think that kind of sums it up there around D2B. It's a good tool. I think that's the key thing. And I think it's all really what Jen mentioned. It's an issue of expectations where it's like D2B makes it look really easy, and in sometimes it actually is, but yeah, then it sets up expectations that upgrading to Backdrop really is that easy, and I wish it was.
Sometimes it's not.
Yeah, I wish it was as easy as D2B made it seem. Just how it's like, follow these 5 steps, and then it really just feels like by the time you get all the way to step 5, and it's like, okay, now we're on update.php, you feel like you're already 90% of the way there, when in fact you really haven't even really started. You're at like 10%. Yeah, but still, great tool. Let's see. Anything else that anybody wanted to say about D2B? Okay. Let's see. So issues for this week. I just wanted to point out again, 6481, which is the Ceditor 5 upgrade. IndigoZella seems to have sorted out the issues with the latest version of Ceditor. There's been a lot of collaboration here. RG Piano came in, Izzy came in, Olaf has been here. So yeah, it's great. I'm really happy to see it coming together. And I apologize, I haven't gotten a chance to test it out myself, but
It's worth mentioning that Indigo's has started the ball rolling with trying to sort of build up a list of almost like a checklist for testing CK editor upgrades, because it has to be kind of done manually. But the thought is, if can create a checklist, it makes it much easier to encourage a wider group of people, particularly even non-coders, to be able to say, well, these are the things that we want you to test, and it makes it a repeatable thing each time. So that process of that started in Zulip. I think it's something like CK Editor testing catalog or something like that. But it's a good thing if there's things that you do in CK Editor that should be in that. It'd be good to add in that and have a comprehensive list of things to test whenever there's an upgrade.
yeah, I would not like having it be documentation or in the issue queue. I think is a great start. Zulip is the least accessible spot.
Yeah, I think it was just to start the ball rolling, really, rather than to be its final resting place.
Yeah, but I like that idea. And so, yeah, I wonder where we could put that. I wouldn't even be opposed to putting it in, like the Ceditor has a special README for upgrading. Might not be a bad spot to just put it in there. Like then it would be not just the process of doing the upgrade development wise, but then the process of QAing it afterwards. Anyway, I'm excited about that. I just closed my pull request, which was updating to a version of Ceditor that's like several versions behind now, because IndigoZella is, I think, gets us up to date with the latest one, I think. But she did float that maybe this is a big set of changes for a bug fix release, and I'm inclined to agree that maybe this is going to be one of the things that we put in for the next minor release. And try to give people a heads up if there's any changes they need to make on the contrib side. Okay, let's see, we're pretty open for topics today. Those are kind of the only two things that I had on the list. But Martin, you said that maybe you had some items
Yeah.
if we had time.
Yeah, we've just been discussing a bit. I think there's some old issues in issue queue, and also we've been discussing a bit in Zulip about what if we were to put maintainers information in the .info file, what would it look like? So I have started started an issue in the docs.backdropcms.org issue queue, which is issue 235, where we're just sort of starting to sort of flesh out what it might look like. And the key things are having the GitHub username as a key, as part of that array key, and with a human readable name, it doesn't matter. And the other is there's a bit of question mark around the maintainers more and the use of the usefulness of that, but have it, particularly the maintainers none, as being a reliable way to say this project doesn't have a maintainer. So we're just sort of trying to get feedback to see if people agree, and there does seem to be large agreement, and the idea is if we can agree it and we can document it and people can start using it, then we can then look at what backdropcms.org does with it.
Yeah. Well, one thing I'd like for sure is that backdropcms.org doesn't even list who's maintaining anything right now, which is really not ideal. So like CiviCRM.
It is on the, if it's in the README, it's on,
Oh
and it
yeah,
should
yeah.
be,
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
all projects should be required to have that in the README.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. That is part of our policy, because that is, yeah, that's how we designate
Yeah.
maintainers right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, what's I mean, obviously we could do more information if this was broken out, and it would be better than having it in the maintainer list. But what other utilities do you think that we would get out of this?
Well, I think having an automatically compiled list of which modules need a maintainer would be of use. But also at the moment we've got a way where and it's reasonably reliable, but not 100% reliable, where we sort of try to say these are the modules that this person might have been involved in the past or is involved in now, because we basically look for a GitHub username in the README, and it would just create something a bit more usable. And a common thing which a few of us who maintain a lot of modules is having a way to be able to easily say these are the modules I maintain.
So we could, so yes to this idea. But if we did have this information in an easily parsable file in the info file, not only does this work for like better documentation of maintainers, we could automate that list of the modules every maintainer maintains, similar to how it's done on Drupal.org. We could automate the maintainers for any given project, including links to their GitHub profiles and all of that. But this also opens the opportunity for like single sign-on between GitHub and backdropcms.org, which is something that we've been talking about for a really long time. And if we did have a single sign-on and could authenticate you with backdropcms.org, we could also know that you're a maintainer of a module and grant you additional permissions to that module. We have a couple of issues right now where if you want to do something for your module, you have to like ask permission from a backdrop admin. And this would sort of remove admins from that process and give people more ability to modify their own projects on backdropcms.org. So something I think we've been kind of thinking about for a long time. On Drupal, maintainers have the ability to modify that stuff, and on Backdrop they don't. And part of that is because we have no way of linking a maintainer to a project or a backdropcms.org user to a project. And now we would know if the username is linked to the GitHub name and the module name is linked to the GitHub name, we can hook those together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a lot of good points there. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, so that's one thing that's been discussed recently.
Yeah, on Drupal.org, there's management under, oh, I'm still sharing my screen. There's management here under the edit tab for maintainers, and we don't do that on backdropcms.org. But I think it would be great if we could actually.
The problem is when you add a maintainer to your project, you need to make them an admin on GitHub. So we'd also have to have like something that would trigger an API call when you did that on the Backdrop website, because otherwise it doesn't actually do anything other than update our documentation.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. There's a project owner on Backdrop CMS, or sorry, on GitHub. Do they have the ability to add an additional maintainer inside of GitHub?
Yeah, so if you've got admin rights on a project, then you can add someone else as admin.
That's good. So yeah, I wonder if you know, we wouldn't probably want to require, I don't know, like, you know, build some integration between, like, if you added it to the info file, you know, would you also get access automatically through GitHub? That's probably an unnecessary amount of integration. But anyway, yeah, this looks great. I see what you're doing here with the two syntaxes, that there's like, you know, GitHub for if you wanted to reference some other kind of username from somewhere else.
Yeah, but
Do you think in
I think this
practice
is more.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I think it was a kind of theoretical thing, and Tim sort of questioned this, and because basically, if you are a maintainer of a project, you have to have a GitHub username, and so within maintainers, there's limited scope. And I mentioned a theoretical thing. If you were expanding it with kind of like credits, then you might want to credit a Drupal user or a GitLab user, but that was the only example I could think of for where that would be different from GitHub, and that's not really in the maintainers. So I don't really mind if we decide to just keep it simple, just have.
Yeah, it might not hurt to you know, if we were going to have two syntaxes anyway, and like, especially if this one was going to be the preferred syntax, the simplified one, you know, just postpone this, you know, be like, okay, well, maybe later having an alternative syntax might be beneficial. Because this is the only one we actually have a use for at the moment.
Yeah. There's a question mark around whether the more tag is any use or whether it just become meaningless. But I do think the non-tag has the potential to be quite useful.
Yeah, and I think that this is also important that this is separate from not having any maintainers in the info file, right?
Yeah.
Because no modules will have maintainers to start with, and so we
Yeah.
don't want every module to be indicated that doesn't have any maintainers initially. Yeah. Yeah.
How do you indicate, is the more where you want it to say like additional maintainers encouraged or some, whatever that language is that how you would get that to appear on the maintainer section?
Yeah, I mean, so you could just have that maintainers more with a blank tag, or you could even have maintainers more and then have a human readable statement as to what you wanted. But I don't know. I'm not 100% sure about that, but
So
Yeah,
that's sort of it's a Boolean right now. Like, do you want to encourage other people to become maintainers or co-maintainers of your
mhm,
module? And when people create their module, they can choose to add that. So as long as
mhm,
we have a way to indicate that same choice here, I'm not
yeah,
bothered about the syntax. I don't know that people have strong opinions about the language there. Like, I don't know if it needs to be put whatever string you want in here,
if we
but
keep
we could be.
if we keep that more, then it does sort of indicate, because you do get some you do get some contrib who actually don't really want any co-maintainers. They just want to
yeah,
look
Yeah.
after it themselves.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I think in those cases, they would just not include the more line,
Yeah,
right? Just,
yeah.
yep.
yeah. Has it been suggested yet that maybe we use a different syntax for this particular question and the none too, where it's like, maintainers needed equals true, instead of
Yeah,
instead of
it's a good
using
idea.
Mhm.
instead of trying to reuse the same key.
Yeah, I
Uh-huh.
think that would be better.
Yeah, that would make it so that everywhere we need to loop through this, we're not like doing weird checking, to
Okay.
see if this thing exists in the list, and it would just be like, are maintainers needed? Yes, and just get that information.
It could also be maintainers none. True.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I
Uh-huh.
like that.
So would that be its own? Would that be separate from the maintainers
Mhm.
subarray? Right.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so it
Cool.
would just be
That's
like
an interesting idea.
maintainers needed equals true, something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure what, I do kind of like, if they could all be maintainers something, I don't know. But, versus like unmaintained. Unmaintained seems
Scary.
scary,
Yeah.
right?
And that's kind of yeah, it's the same as the maintainers none, really, isn't it? But we've got unmaintained is possibly inaccurate because we do still have a bug squad.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and security team.
And
Yeah.
security.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
The different
there's-
Drupal unmaintained.
it's like it's like saying we don't have a current maintainer for this versus this is not supported, don't use it.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
more that there's a vacancy here rather than this is on its way out.
I was like, what about maintainers wanted? Like instead of maintainers needed, right? Because it's like, it's like, what's the better phrasing here? But then it
Maintainers
sounds kind of
needed.
like bounty hunters, or something.
Needed is like, we don't have a maintainer and we need one, and maintainers wanted is like, sure, if you want to maintain, you can help me, like sort of like a different level of intensity there.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think wanted is probably better. Or it could be, yeah, it's like maintainers more, right? Do you want more maintainers?
Yeah, yeah, I don't know. But anyway, like having a separate key, I think would be great. I'm not particular about the syntax at this
Yeah.
point, but I'm sure that this is,
Yeah.
potential
Yeah,
might shift.
I think most people are just sort of open to let, let's get this structured so it's easy to pass.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. Yeah, and this is the thing with info files, just generally, there's been a lot of issues about putting more info in info files. And they've gotten stuck, and I really think that we should just add the standard and encourage it to start being used, and then
Mm.
like in parallel or asynchronously also build up the integration on backdropcms.org.
Yeah.
I think
I
the
mean,
reason
you can,
they keep getting stuck is because everybody keeps going, I want 15 things. But
Yeah.
like if this is like, I want one thing, maintain information. And I think if we can do that, we can sort of reach a consensus on each one thing, but trying to do
Mm,
consensus on 15 things at a time is really hard.
mm,
So yeah,
yeah.
good job, Martin, for
But it was interesting in this issue because Steve Morehouse said, "Oh, we also need categories," and pointed out, "Well, we've already got tags." And Doc Wilmot said, "Oh yeah, me and Doc Wilmot, me and Bugfolder put that in." And I said, "Yeah, it's great. As tags is really flexible. You can have one or you can have many, and you can follow the list or you can add additionals. It's brilliant. But we need to get that used in b.org and in the project browser, so you can say, I want to look for all projects with a tag of email."
Yeah. I do think we have like some of that set up. Like I think we have the taxonomy exists. I don't think I don't think project module is actually populating any of the data
right.
stuff. Yeah.
I mean, you
All
can
the
put
view.
and you can put whatever you want in the info files. It's just if nothing is using that key, it'll just get ignored.
mm,
Good. Well, I think we're all on the same page with that one. Did you have any other issues, Martin?
so there's one other thing that's just sort of come to light, which is the reason this has cropped up again is because I reached out in Zulip to see if anyone could help with fixing some of the UX issues in Fast Token Browser, and RGPiano has jumped in and done some amazing stuff. So it now works in a very similar way to Core. So it's kind of reignited this idea. So for those who don't know about Fast Token Browser, it loads the tokens using Ajax. So particularly if you've got a lot of tokens, so maybe you've got things like you've got chaining of tokens, you've got entity tokens, or you've got kind of paragraphs and that are part of a node, and you've got fields within that. You can end up with a lot of tokens there, and the whether it's loading the token browser or loading something like token help, it can crash with the regular token browser. But Fast Token Browser just loads the top level, and then it loads each level, each lower down level. So that's why this is sort of seen as a good thing, even though it's not sort of hitting it on the numbers, but it's it's basically, it avoids that gotcha where the token browser breaks because you've enabled a few modules and you suddenly got thousands of tokens.
Yeah, I love this. This would be great. It looks like this doesn't have a pull request yet. Is that right? That
No,
it exists as a contrib module.
it's contrib module, and really it's only just it's only just got to the state where RGPiano just this week has fixed some of the UX things that were a bit of made it less desirable than core from a UX perspective. I think what you had to do, you always had to select the token first and then select the field, but you now sort of have the option. You can do it either way, the way that RGPiano has done it, and it will now also insert at the cursor. So
Yeah,
Uh,
that's excellent. It probably would still be, I haven't tried it out, but I would imagine that it's probably still a little slower, like browsing through it if it's doing an AJAX request every time
mhm,
you expand
mm.
an option. But I could see this being really beneficial. Yeah, it doesn't, like even just on a site that is core, if you had a lot of content types and a lot of fields, you know, even that can start to weigh down your page quite a bit. And that one of our early changes a while back was that like it used to be that in Drupal 7 the tokens most of the time I think were actually like embedded onto the page, and that was even worse, where it's like you'd go to edit a field or something like that, or edit your path auto patterns, and the page would just take forever to load because it was loading the token table. And we mitigated that substantially by trying at least to always put the token browser into a modal. And so everywhere in core, it's a modal, which prevents the slowdown on the page load. But yeah, opening the modal browser sometimes can, the token browser can take a while. But this would eliminate that wait. Also would make it so that, I mean, if you really wanted to go down the rabbit hole, it would, for better or worse, probably enable recursive tokens, which right now we don't support in any real way, right? Where it's like if you wanted to add a token for like a parent, for example, so you could go from a node to a reference and then go back up to the node again, and handle things recursively, because there wouldn't be any, you know, you'd never get back down to the original field unless you specifically opened it again. That's kind of thing that happens all the time if you're looking at the DOM inspector in your browser, right? You can go to a child node and then you can look at the parent property, and then you can go to the child node and go to the parent property, and it'll just recurse endlessly. I don't know if that's a concern or not. It's kind of like it enables. I was gonna call it a bad idea, but I'm not even sure if it is a bad idea, but it enables a dangerous idea.
Mm.
But overall, yeah, it's gonna avoid some performance problems overall. I think it's gonna depend on how it feels, you know, like as an end user. I would bet on a fresh backdrop install, it'll feel great because backdrop's really fast, until you start bogging it down. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
We've only got 4 minutes left. Do you have any other issues you wanted
No,
to talk about?
that was all the only ones I thought would be worth mentioning.
Yeah, this is great. I'll try to give this a contrib module a spin.
Now
Cool.
GPiano is doing some work on the JavaScript because it doesn't do name spacing at the moment, so he's gonna have a look at that.
Great. Well, cool. All right. Well, let's wrap up for today. Thank you, Martin, for bringing the topics.
If you
Thank you, Jen, for the clarifications on D2B. Joseph?
if there's just a little bit of time, can I demo something that I worked on last week?
Yeah.
Um, oh shoot, where's the screen record? So I was making some changes to the web profiler module. And so I posted about this in Zulip, but I added call graphs essentially, like visual representations. So I can go to, I don't know, let's go to manage files. And then, so it puts one of the things I added a little while back was this bar at the bottom. but it'll show on any page, and you can click this little link here and then click that. And oh, it's out of view.
Nope.
But
Oh, wow.
it didn't center it, but it generates a visual call graph for that page for admin content files that I just loaded. And so each of these are functions. And then if there's a class with multiple functions, it'll draw a blue box around all of them. So like this is the view class.
Hmm.
And then it also includes queries in here as these like greenish boxes. But it's like real time generates call graphs of every page on your site.
That's a little scary.
I don't know. I don't know how many people would find this useful, but we had discussed like putting this on the demos sandboxes or something a long time ago.
Yeah, every time I see the backdrop call graph, or actually even anytime I use a debugger and I can see the call stack,
Mhm.
the heavy stack of layout stuff, like really high in our call stack, always like I always wish that
So this
there
is
was
this is
there was
actually this is filtering out anything that represents less than 1% of the page load.
mm-hmm. Yeah, because there's
Um,
probably thousands and thousands of other functions.
let me see if I can edit that real quick. But yeah, it's quite tall. Where is this? Oh no, this is actually 2% or more.
Where I was going with that was like if it were possible to rework our early bootstrap ordering, like that would be neat. Like if you could call the menu route handler like super early and then do everything inside of it. And then when you were done, then call the layout handling stuff afterward. Um, that would be preferable, I think,
Mhm.
but I'm not sure if that's really reasonable or um, something that we could actually handle. Uh-oh, now your computer's locked up because of a big call graph.
Trying to view the call graph. Yeah. I actually don't know how long this is going to take.
That's cool though. I haven't used the web profiler module in the past. This is a module, right?
Yes. Yeah. You have to have the XHProp extension installed, but you just throw the module on there and it'll make your query data and your XHProp data available on the site.
Cool.
We probably don't want to wait for this.
Okay. Yeah, I've got to run to another meeting too. So, yeah, but thank you for sharing, Joseph.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, everybody. Well, thank you everybody for the discussion. Appreciate it. And we'll see you all next week. So thank you.